Welcome, welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to Just Minding My Business. I am so happy that you stopped by. And today I am so excited to be talking about this topic because I have questions, and I'm sure you have questions as well. So we are honored today to have Eric Runge, who is the founder of Family Office Bitcoin, a registered investment advisor serving family offices managing 50 million in assets. He doesn't pitch crypto, he builds institutional grade Bitcoin portfolios designed for the kind of long-term capital allocators who measure success in generations, not quarters. Well, I like that. So Eric bridges the gap between Bitcoin and traditional finances, two worlds that rarely trust each other to protect generational wealth. Welcome, Eric.
Thank
Because
you, Ida. It's a pleasure to be here.
I have a lot of questions because, I mean, of course, when Bitcoin first came out, I had to learn what is Bitcoin, the whole 101 stuff with it. And, I invested a little bit and I had to, in order to learn how things moved. But the one thing that I haven't learned is how I make it work for me in creating some kind of wealth that I can use.
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good question. So it's there Bitcoin is a really interesting and I would argue unique asset in terms of its characteristics, qualities, and design.
Mhm.
And if you go back, now the important thing to remember at the outset is that Bitcoin is a very high volatility asset.
Yes.
It's higher vol than the S&P. It's as high a volatility or higher as a given tech stock. So with high risk comes high reward, potential reward. And so Bitcoin is historically, depending on the time period, has produced very good returns. Now, very good to some people might mean 5%, but Bitcoin has produced double digit or triple digit returns in the past. Along with that, though, I want to make sure I'm careful to say it's produced significant drawdowns as well. So people have lost a ton of money. But for long-term people, for long-term holders of Bitcoin, depending on the time frame, they've made money. So if that might be a place to start, is buying and holding Bitcoin, depending on your situation.
Okay. Yes. And that's probably me, buy and hold, because, I've got in my account and I just don't even really think about it.
Mhm.
From time to time, I might throw something in there. But then I also notice when it grows and when I lose.
Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So, my main question is, how do I integrate it with traditional finances? That's the question.
By finances, are you talking your budget or maybe your investment portfolio?
Yes, yes. And I mean, because right now in the United States and other countries, Bitcoin is used to buy a lot of things, real estate, down to restaurant dinners, things like that. So, but in the United States, it hasn't gravitated to that point yet in widestream.
Oh, I see. On a day-to-day basis, you're saying, how do I sort of utilize it? How do I
Right.
spend it? Okay. Yeah, so that's a great question. And for context, Bitcoin is around 16 years old. It was launched in 2009 by Satoshi Nakamoto.
Mhm.
Um, if we're talking about Bitcoin strictly as a currency, or technically what we would call it is a medium of exchange, that's one of the two use cases of money is medium of exchange and store of value.
Mhm.
Medium of exchange is a fancy way of saying the dollars that I have in my pocket when I go to the store and buy a gallon of milk. And that's the nature of your question. Um, no currency in the history of currencies has ever been up and fully running after simply 16 years. A lot of times, now you're not asking this, especially in this way, but a lot of times people will say Bitcoin is not a currency because you can't spend it and therefore Bitcoin, is terrible or whatever. That's not what you're saying.
No.
You're saying, how do I actually spend it? So to finally get to your question, for example, so Bitcoin's a peer-to-peer market. One way that you can spend it if you want to is if you have a friend who you want to buy something from and you have Bitcoin and they're willing to receive Bitcoin, you can just send them Bitcoin. They give you the item, kind of like you would at a flea market with dollars in your pocket.
Mhm.
And you're just going to give that person the money for the tennis racket that you buy or whatever. On a more commercial level, the payment app Square, are you familiar with that payment app?
Yes.
Yeah. They're all over the country. It's that little white square. You tap your card. That app allows you to pay in Bitcoin as well. That's a Jack Dorsey app, and he deliberately is building out rails so that people can buy stuff in Bitcoin. So that's a couple of use cases right now.
Okay, because I mean, if I'm holding Bitcoin, because I'm a holder when I invest in something, I'm not the type that as soon as I get a little bit of money, I'm gonna run and spend it. Okay, I'm gonna hold it for something worth spending. Let's say,
Mhm.
for example, real estate. So let's say I want to buy land. Okay, I built
Mhm.
up my Bitcoin and I want to buy land. I want to do something big with it. How does
Mhm.
that work?
That's a great question. I'm not certain about companies at that level that would accept Bitcoin for real estate. They may be out there, but I'm not a specialist in the real estate space. Given where we're at in the adoption cycle right now, I would actually be surprised if somebody would take Bitcoin. Although stranger things have happened. You could probably do a Google search and find somebody who would take Bitcoin for real estate. That's the best answer I can give you right now. We're still kind of up getting things up and running in terms of being able to pay in Bitcoin. I'll tell you right now, people are so used to dollars, and it makes sense. We've been on a dollar standard for forever, that it makes the most sense just from a practical point of view to pay in dollars, as opposed to Bitcoin. A lot of times when people now, I'm not subscribing that people pay in dollars or Bitcoin. They can make their own decisions. But a lot of times when people study out Bitcoin and buy Bitcoin, the trend oftentimes is they don't sell their Bitcoin to buy real estate. It's the reverse. They usually do things like sell or mortgage their real estate to buy Bitcoin.
Oh, okay. Okay. But I mean, what my thing is, what is the point of building a nice Bitcoin nest if
You're not going to spend it.
right on something?
Yeah, if we think about the two use cases of money, medium of exchange and store of value, there really are two options that you have, but toggle for a minute over to store of value. Okay. Um, People don't, the Manhattan real estate developers in the 1600s didn't buy real estate so that they could spend it. They bought real estate so that they could pass it down to third, fourth, fifth
Right.
generations, right?
Right.
Once your estate reaches a certain level of wealth, you're not thinking in terms of how do I make my mortgage payment with my investments every single day. You've got that part covered. You've got money over here in the bank and you're going to use that to take your family out to dinner and you got the rest of your life covered with
Mhm.
T-bonds and whatever it is that you've got, right? Then over here you've got your long-term assets that you intend to pass to your children that you'll never cash them out. Your stocks, maybe real estate holdings, Bitcoin might be considered to be included into that. So when we think in terms of, I think there's a deeper question underneath your question, which is if it doesn't exist in the current fiat regime, the current fiat system, what good is it ever? If you can't eventually spend it, then why do we even have it? Well, you can, in the sense of if you wanted to spend it, you can just sell your Bitcoin back to Coinbase and they'll give you dollars. And then you go spend the dollars and you benefited from the price accumulation of Bitcoin.
Okay. Okay.
Can you spend it directly? Yes. It's like I said, the Square app. Will you be able to buy everything that you could in the future that you can currently buy with dollars like real estate, tough to tell. We're very, very early, and this is unprecedented territory in the history of the world. So
Mhm.
we just don't know. But it's looking like Bitcoiners want it to be that way.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that would be great when it becomes that way because I mean I'm a whole person and I believe in the nest egg wholeheartedly.
Mhm,
And I believe in it for different reasons. I mean, we have rainy days, okay,
mhm, mhm.
legacy for my children is definitely a part of that. But one of the things, in terms of legacy for my kid, I'm teaching my child everything I know, everything I've learned, whether it's in this podcast or other things. And I want them to not depend on my legacy, but create their own.
Mhm. I hear that.
You know what I'm saying? To me, it makes more sense to teach them how to fish.
That's right. Or else you give them your fish and they just waste it away. They need to
Exactly.
know.
And we've seen that happen so many
That's
times.
right.
We got some,
That happens at the family office billionaire level as much as it does with regular people.
I'm sure it does because
Yeah,
they don't have a sense of, I earned it.
that's right.
It's
And
so different.
that's a human dignity issue. We have a need for purpose and to
Yes.
stand on our own 2 feet. That's right.
Yes. Yes, indeed. So tell me, in terms of your company, how do you work with your clients?
So, as you can imagine, a strong educational element. Bitcoin is something that Bitcoin is like the electrical wiring in your house. Like my 3-year-old can turn on the lights, but he can't draw a diagram of how the lights are wired, right? We're not at the point where you can just use Bitcoin and not understand what it is. You kind of can do that, but the point there is that Bitcoin is shocking, polarizing, scary, challenging for a lot of people, understandably and rightfully. And so there needs to be an educational element. And I am that educational element. I love Bitcoin. I eat, drink, and breathe it. It's a lot of fun. I was built to understand this asset. So education is huge. Plus, I have a teaching background and a degree in education. So I love that aspect of it. So initial and ongoing education is very important. Setting that aside, if a client wants to allocate to Bitcoin, they really have two options with my firm. You can buy on-chain Bitcoin, in which an on-chain is just a fancy way of saying real Bitcoin, like you would buy at Coinbase or whatever, where you have a wallet address and
Mhm.
you actually own the Bitcoin. You can do that with my firm, where we manage it for you, and we like enact things like tax loss harvesting. Most people don't know that that's a thing. So that's one way of doing it on chain holding. And then through our custodian, I've developed a downside risk mitigated ETF stock Bitcoin portfolio. That's not on chain Bitcoin, but it's participating in Bitcoin products like spot Bitcoin ETFs, Bitcoin treasury companies, uh, and as most importantly, downside risk mitigation. So that the big advantage there is, like, let's say Bitcoin goes up by 100%, but it also drops by 100%. We're going to cut about 75% of that volatility out of there with hopefully asymmetric upside potential as well.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Because the average person, like me, I got Coinbase, but I don't know what the heck I'm doing.
Hmm.
Sometimes, I don't know when to buy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? So I like the piece that you talked about with the education. So, in terms of education, somebody's coming to you and they don't know what the heck Bitcoin even is. How does that work with your company?
Yeah, that's the first challenge that I tried to meet when I got turned on to Bitcoin myself. And so I created a presentation. It's a PowerPoint, and I just take people through it from what I describe it as from zero to Bitcoin. In about 45 minutes, I go through fiat currency, Nixon, 1971, the gold standard, what hard money is, soft money. So we just go right through it. And by the end, I think people have a pretty decent understanding of it, so that they can have enough confidence then to continue studying it either with me or on their own.
Okay. All right.
Yeah,
So,
that presentation is a lot of fun.
yes, I'm sure it is, especially with you.
Oh, thanks.
For sure. Wow. So, these questions are just, I'm trying to formulate it because there's a lot I need to know. So once a
Sure.
person feels confident enough to invest, how do you walk them through that process of it?
Yeah, so I would first of all make certain that I take them through my Bitcoin 101 presentation just to ensure alignment,
Mm-hmm.
so they understand enough of what Bitcoin is. And then on a practical level, with my firm, it's as simple as opening an account the same way that you would open an IRA. It's a logistical process. My admin will send paperwork, you sign it, you wire money, and you're a client, and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Now,
so fairly straight ahead.
okay, and how often do you meet with the client to go over their portfolio, things like that? Um, how often is that done?
It's in my firm, it's really kind of client centric and client specific. I want my clients to know when I call that I don't have to say, I want to be able to say, hey, this is Eric, instead of saying, hey, this is Eric Runge from, do you remember me? I want to have a good relationship with people such that they just know who I am, that sort of thing. One thing that I have found is that the Bitcoin world, and we don't just offer Bitcoin, although my firm is called Veritas Bitcoin Strategies or Family Office Bitcoin, but we have other, a little bit more traditional strategies, so that I just try to keep my clients informed. But like the Bitcoin space moves quickly and there are new offerings available. So I just, if stuff is interesting and I think of a particular client, I might call them up and say, hey, I'm going to send you a private memo that I just wrote on this given Bitcoin treasury stock. I think you'll like it. So I try to add value where I can.
Mm-hmm. So if, excuse me, if people want to connect with you, how do they do so?
They can email me at eric@veritaswealth.net. And that's Veritas like Latin for truth. Eric at veritaswealth.net. And my website is familyofficebitcoin.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the traditional stuff.
Oh, sure.
So what do you offer in terms of the traditional packages?
Yeah. Did you say traditional strategies?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
With financing, yes, for
Yeah,
people.
for sure. Yeah. Okay, so two strategies really. The first that feels the most traditional is a public markets risk managed strategy, and that's a third party outsourced strategy that we use. Essentially, the goal there, so we're going to invest in traditional stocks and bonds, mostly ETFs, 60/40 portfolio, 60% stocks, 40% bonds, or an 80/20 or a 50/50, depending on your risk tolerance. The part of that that's not traditional that I'm the most proud of is that the risk managed. So my team has proprietary risk management software that they built that receives 10,000 risk signals per day. And
Mm,
so the goal there is not to predict the future, but the goal is to see where the risk is and sort of sidestep it, de-weight from the riskiest downside areas, and ideally re-weight into the riskiest upside areas. So I'm using risk in the sense of we have upside risk, downside risk. We want to lean toward upside risk if we can. Um, that's called our risk managed approach. The whole goal there is to seek superior long-term returns by avoiding large drawdowns. So instead of falling into a pit and then having to dig our way clear out of it, we want to not fall as far. That way we don't have to hit the ball out of the park in order to recover. It's a shorter path to recovery after a market drawdown, which incidentally is how I structure my risk managed Bitcoin portfolios as well. Same philosophy. Okay, so that's strategy number one. The second strategy, I did say traditional, but I kind of lied. It's now that I think about it, it's really not, but it's still familiar. So it's an AI hedged strategy. It consists of a basket of AI stocks, companies that are benefiting from or seek to benefit from advances in AI. And there's downside risk hedging there as well, to mitigate losses. So we cut a lot of the volatility out, but still see quite a bit of the upside.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, let's talk about your book.
Oh, great.
Yes, indeed. So you're the author of Bitcoin and the Family Office, an intelligent introduction for the ultra affluent. So let's talk a little bit about that and what readers will get from that.
Yeah, so I had just been going out. So I love working with family offices. I love the way they think. They think like Bitcoiners. They think like the way you're talking is, stand on your own 2 feet. I want my kids not to simply inherit my money. I want them to inherit my values.
Yeah.
Family offices are huge into that. And their number one anxiety, I would say, is will my kids be able to pass this legacy on that I've built? Um, so I was going to a lot of family office events and talking to a lot of family offices, and I saw a lot of errors in thinking from these very sophisticated people, um, financially, just very, very high level folks, but still making the same mistakes regarding Bitcoin. And at some point, I realized there needs to be a bridge between what I know about Bitcoin and my experience on sort of the Wall Street side of things and these family offices who have these goals of basically wealth preservation. They don't want to double their money. They want to not cut their money in half. And so seeing that they made the sort of same thinking errors, I realized it's not because anybody's stupid. And normal people don't make the thinking errors because they're stupid. They make the errors because we're so early in adoption right now that people are just going to mess it up. It's there's a lot of confusion until you put 10 or 100 or 1,000 hours of study in. So I wanted to take all the knowledge that I had and put it into this book, to help and speak family office language. So what we cover is things that are important to family offices: governance, custody. I see a lot of custody mistakes with family offices. We talk about it's essentially a bridge so that they can be able to justify Bitcoin both to themselves and to their investment committees and take off the table this idea that it's a crazy speculative sort of gambling casino asset. I want to move people in the opposite direction, that I think Bitcoin deserves consideration, and I think it does belong in a portfolio. I think it's a responsible asset to hold.
Okay. Yes, and that's what people need to see.
Yes. And it's
They
just
need
through education.
Yes, they need to know, why do I need to hold this? Why do I even need this?
That's right. And the idea is not to sell people on Bitcoin. That's like the difference between Bitcoin and every other asset that I've ever worked with. Everyone always wants to sell you their stuff. And of course, my business works on sales. We make money when we sell stuff, but it's a little different because my goal is that people need to understand Bitcoin. And I'm not worried about what happens after that because they will decide if Bitcoin is right or not for them. And I cannot control that decision. And I can't, what do they say? You can't put stripes on a zebra, or you can't change whatever the word is. I can't change if somebody is not right for Bitcoin and Bitcoin's not right for them. There's literally nothing I can do, and I'm fine with it. All I want people to do is study it.
Right. And that makes so much sense because,
Yeah,
like you said, a lot of people heard of it, but they know absolutely nothing.
that's right. And they don't know where to begin.
Right. They don't know where to begin. And even if they dabble a little bit, they still don't understand it.
That's right. That's right.
So education is key. And the more you empower people, the more they understand. And because you put that effort into them,
Mhm.
they're looking at you differently.
I think so. I try to give first and help people, because when you understand Bitcoin, it's not just I'm going to go study Bitcoin and then I will understand Bitcoin. In order to understand Bitcoin, you have to ask a more deep fundamental question of what is money? And that's not a Bitcoin question, but the only way to understand Bitcoin is to know what money really is and how often do we do that? And how often do traditional wealth advisors do that? It's not a question that we ever need to answer. No client ever shows up and asks me, well, what is money? Everyone thinks that they know what money is, but when we start looking into what is money? What constitutes money? Why is one thing money and something else not? Then we can start to see how money is corrupted. And then when we see
Yes.
that it can be, we can see Bitcoin as a competer. Huh, that's not a word, but for to become incorruptible money. So, yeah, that's why studying it is hard because it challenges your assumptions. Often, this is going to sound weird. I think Bitcoin often challenges people's assumptions about who they are as people, who their neighbors are, even it gets spiritual. Sometimes even our connection to God. Bitcoin is not a mystical woo-woo asset. It's actually very grounded, but it's polarizing, and I think because it's sort of confrontational in its very nature.
Mhm. So, since we're talking about what money is,
Yeah.
let's go ahead and define that.
There's no there's no single sentence talking head answer I can give you in short form, but we can start the conversation if you
Yes,
want to go down that road.
I do. I do
Yeah.
because when I first started studying Bitcoin, fiat was in the mix,
hmm
and I had to do a history thing on money.
hmm So you put some work into this, it sounds
I
like.
did. I
You
did.
know the term fiat.
Yeah, I did.
Absolutely.
Because I'm that type. If I'm gonna get into anything, I'm gonna try to learn as much as I can about
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Absolutely. We can describe money, and I don't know that we can come to a definitive conclusion. Maybe someone would want to argue that yes, we absolutely can. But what I know is that we can describe it. And money has to have certain key characteristics to basically be functional. So people have used over the years seashells as money. They've used oranges as money. Obviously, gold came to be accepted as a very wide standard. We've used paper money as money. Now we use debit cards and computer screens as money
Mhm.
because I don't spend my debit card, it stays with me, and then the numbers on a computer screen update. So that's digital money. So a lot of things can be money. But what happened over the history of time is certain characteristics naturally sort of got weeded out from money. Like I mentioned that oranges were used as money at one point, but
Mhm.
oranges have a durability problem. They're only good for about 2 weeks before they rot and mold. And if I need money for longer than that as a store of value, money that I don't need to spend,
Mhm.
as opposed to simply spending money on a daily basis, oranges are not going to function as that side of what money is, the store of value. So oranges became less and less favored for that reason. Um, Other money that's easily reproducible, it became less favored. Seashells, if I'm on an island and my little economy operates on seashells and there's a limited amount of seashells, that could work until a foreign traveler comes, discovers that those same seashells exist on an island 100 miles away, brings them all back, dumps them on, doubles the currency supply, and can bankrupt the whole island. So reproducibility, or in other words, scarcity, is a really important part of money. That's why gold came into favor because it's durable. It'll last for hundreds of years, not like oranges. It's relatively scarce. It's really hard to produce, although you can produce more, but you can't just double the supply of gold in a month or a year.
Mhm.
That's physically very, very difficult. So there are these characteristics, core key characteristics of money that are really important. Now, something that's wrong with gold, in my opinion, where gold started to fail, is it has a weight problem.
Mhm.
Technically, that's what we'd call portability. You can't hardly move it. And so what? So I'm talking $100 million of gold from New York to Dubai. That becomes very difficult. You need security. People might die. You got to have insurance, and then you have to pay to store that gold when you get that to your destination. So gold as payment sort of fell out of favor in that regard. But what happened was we sort of morphed the system. We centralized the gold into vaults and then issued paper IOUs against gold. And paper IOUs are fiat currency, US dollars or the British pound or whatever. But then what happens is when governments get hold of all of the gold, and it's not just the US government, this is sort of the nature of governments in general. They tend to like to spend money. I don't know if you're aware of that. That's how governments like to work.
Yeah, well,
And
I'm
so
definitely aware.
they love spending money. They got to spend it if they got it. So governments tend to get out over their skis, and they tend to overspend what they have. And so by 1971, we are 6 times more in debt than we have the gold reserves to back it up.
Mhm.
So Nixon goes on TV, delinks the dollar from gold, and introduces the world to fiat currency. The reason for that, if we sort of rewind the videotape, a huge reason is because gold is too heavy to move. If we could move gold quickly and easily, we wouldn't need to centralize it and then issue more portable paper IOUs against it. We try to solve that weight problem by issuing US dollars, but then the dollars led to fiat. And fiat, you can easily reproduce it. The government money printer is like those seashells. The government can just print, and the more they print, the more prices rise.
Mhm.
So when we talk, this is a very long answer to your question, like what is money? Those are a few key characteristics. So it needs to be hard to reproduce, portable, easy to move. It needs to be durable. You need to be able to recognize it. If I don't know if that guy's sending me a gold coin and it might be fool's gold, I need to be able to test that very easily.
Mhm.
That's why Bitcoin was designed to compete as new money because it's portable. You cannot reproduce it. There's only 21 million that will ever exist, so it's perfectly scarce. But I can move it in about 10 minutes. I can move 100 million from New York to Dubai in about 10 minutes. That's the average block confirmation size. So that's I feel like we could keep going down this rabbit hole, but Bitcoin has other characteristics. You can easily recognize it. It runs on math. Um, and so that's kind of the intro to the question, what is money?
Okay, well, you did a fantastic description of it.
Thank you. It's fun to talk
Fantastic.
about.
Yes, yes, indeed. And that takes us to you definitely coming back
Oh
because
yeah, I'll do that.
yeah, we got to keep rocking with this.
We're just scratching the surface here today.
Of course we are. And this helps people to understand Bitcoin because that's what
Mhm,
I had to do. I had to go
mhm,
and look at the
mhm.
history of how we got here,
Yes.
this
Yeah,
trend.
that's right. And so like when I saw the damage that has been done by fiat, like how it used to be that you could have a single parent, single income household, and you had a parent, mostly mom, at home, right?
Mm-hmm.
But after 1971, inflation started to rise. You needed eventually both people working. That means a kid comes home without a parent, and a
Mm-hmm.
kid without a parent is lonelier, but also can get into trouble. And
Yes.
so my heart is for, I have certain various things that I care about more than others. Everybody does, right? Some people love charity. I care about kids, like abandoned children or lonely kids, because I was one of them as a kid. And so when I started to see the connection to how currency connects to culture, and then, we've got so much tension in our country right now between liberal and conservative and black and white. And I hate it. I want us to live with peace and in peace. And
Yes.
I think a lot of the issues that we are facing are sort of secretly driven by our currency. So for me, when I saw, and all of that clashes with my values. I want to live in harmony and peace, and I want cooperation, and I want people to be able to achieve their potential and everybody achieve dignity and what they were made for. And I want strong fathers at home and loving mothers. And that's just a really big deal. So when I saw the connection between currency and the family fallout and cultural and political fallout, and then saw what Bitcoin is seeking to do, for me, I was sold.
Yes. Wow. So that's going to be our next conversation.
Good. I like to have that one.
That's going to be our next conversation because I see the link too.
Hmm.
I see it, and you see it even more and more every day. How corrupt it is,
Yes.
and how it divides people,
Yes.
and it shouldn't.
It shouldn't. And it's tragic
It's
that we're
very
here.
tragic, very tragic. Wow,
Yeah.
Eric. So We got a date, sir.
Okay, you just send me the time and date and I'll be there.
So again, Eric, how do people connect with you?
Eric@veritaswealth.net. You can email me anytime or visit my website, familyofficebitcoin.com. It is for family offices, but anybody can visit. There are a ton of resources that anybody who wants to can click and download to study more about Bitcoin. You can also contact me through the website.
Yes. And again, how do we get the book?
Book is on Amazon. If you email me special, I might send you a copy for free.
All righty now. Well, I definitely appreciate this conversation. It was very deep, so deep that we're going to have to do this again and focus on the family and money
Mhm.
because that connection is, I don't think a lot of people realize that, and we need to really focus on that.
Yeah, it's huge and it's near and dear to my heart.
Yes, it's very
Yeah.
huge. So
Yeah.
thank you so much, Eric, and thank you, audience, as well, because wow, without you, we wouldn't have anything.
Mhm.
We need the guests and we need you. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ida. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely.